Greetings and salutations, everyone's. This is your boy, the host of the Real Talk Podcast and the Real Talk Podcast interview, the one and only Jesse Jones. Y'all know what it is. Yo, we got a special edition of the Real Talk Podcast interview going on today. I had the privilege and the honor of sitting down with the one and only Pastor JC Wallace. Y'all know him as a part of the pastor's crew here at the Real Talk Podcast. Well, JC is branching out, and he's also starting his own podcast called the On Earth Podcast. He's getting things together, and he decided that what he was going to do to open it off, to kick it off, was do an unveiling of himself, an expose of himself. He wanted me to sit down and interview him, and I had carte blanche to ask whatever I wanted to ask. And we got into some stuff. We peeled back the layers. So if you ever wanted to have an understanding of who JC is, this is the interview to listen to. This is the thing to go to. So we did a little, it was kind of almost a simulcast, but I wanted him to be able to get his stuff out first. And so now we get ready to launch on the Real Talk Podcast, or on the Real Talk Podcast page, I should say, for the Real Talk Podcast interview. So sit back, enjoy, and relax. Let's get started with the Real Talk Podcast.
This is Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk. This is Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk.
Yo, what's up? Hey, oh man, this is gonna be interesting. Hey, first and foremost, I want to welcome you all to the first ever episode of On Earth Podcast. It has been a conversation for a very long time. It has been a plan for a very long time, and we are finally bringing it into fruition. And so listen, I'm low-key excited, but also at the same time nervous, because for the very first episode I wanted to do something a little daring, a little risky, and really Jesse was the only person I could really trust with an unbiased heart to pull this off. And so rather than me navigating the conversation and kind of dictating where this is going to go, I have given Jesse, who is the founder and the esteemed host of the Real Talk Podcast, free reign to pretty much ask what he wants, dig how deep he wants. Of course, if you get a little too edgy, I might have to, pump the brakes just a little bit. But listen, I promise you, this is going to be, I wanted to give people really an in-depth look at who I am, realistically. I'm a myth to a lot of people. There's a lot of mystery surrounding me, JC, the person. A lot of people only see my internet persona, which is not too far different from my real life persona, but there's definitely layers to it. And so I wanted to kind of share a little bit of my life, and hopefully that the whole message of the On Earth Podcast, of course, is scripturally based, on earth as it is in heaven. And so we wanted to be able to talk about real life situations and circumstances and get a God's eye view on them. And so my prayer is that through today's segment and every segment moving forward, that you would get something to be able to take with you, to really be an encouragement and change to your life for the better moving forward. So that being said, I'm going to let Jesse introduce himself, and hey, do what you got to do, man. Do what you got to do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So first of all, I want to thank you, man. This is an honor to be on the very first episode of the On Air Podcast. I appreciate you trusting me, and I promise you, not only am I not going to let you down, I promise you, you won't regret having me interview you. What few people know about me is this is the kind of stuff I love to do. I love to do the interviews. I love to dig into the minds and the psyches of people to get to understand them better. So this is right up my alley. So I'm very appreciative. And yes, as JC said, I am the host, the founder, the proprietor of the Real Talk Podcast. And so I am very appreciative that JC has allowed me to do this and asked me to do this. We've done a lot of podcasts together on the Real Talk podcast with the Pastor's crew. And so through that, we've gotten to know each other a lot. And then also through some of our just our own conversations. We started off real rocky at the first. If anybody who remembers the defunct Ain't That Some Shift podcast, the very first episode, JC and I looked like we was about to come to blows. But from there, we wound up just bonded and talking and getting to know each other better. And so I am thankful. I am ready to dig in whenever you are, sir.
I think I'm ready, man. I think I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, so I have a host of questions, a host of them. I've done the research, Doc. I've talked to some people. I've gotten to some people who know you've asked them some questions. So I got some things that you'll be like, ain't no way in the world that Jesse should know this, but I know it. And so they span across a bunch of different types of categories. So and I'm gonna hit them randomly. So for those of y'all who are listening, these questions are not gonna, follow any kind of flow. I want to keep JC on his toes, so they're gonna be all over the place. But I promise you, by the time this is done, you're gonna know the man, the myth, the legend of JC Wallace a lot better. So let's get you comfortable. Let's get you a little comfortable. I learned when you do interviews, you want to get the person you interview comfortable. So let me give you a couple of softball questions. Let's start off with, in a few words, describe who is JC really.
Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm kind of a mystery to myself at times, but if I had to put it in a few words, it's bad. But the first thing that comes to mind is petty. Um,
we gonna get into that too, but go ahead.
petty, purposeful. I'm gonna have to go with 3 P. So let me think of another P word: petty, purposeful, and practical.
Okay. I like that. And I would actually concur with that. Which leads us right into the very next it's still kind of a softball question, but it has some deep undertones to it. Something that we're going to get back to a little later. It's interesting that you said that one of the ways you would also describe yourself is petty, because people often think of you, or at least the social media perception of you, is something of a jokester. So, before we get into that portion of it, my question is simply, where do you get your sense of humor from?
I have no idea. I mean, my whole family, well, at least on my mom's side anyway. I don't know. We all kind of are built like that. I don't know. I'm a different breed though, because I don't know, man. It's like it's in me, and it's passed down to my children in such a major way. I don't know. That's all we do. Like, people will tell you, if you ever been inside my home for any occasion, that's all we do is joke, and even the most serious of circumstances. Go to parent teacher conferences, I'm joking. Go to church, I'm joking. On a business call, I'm joking. Talking to my pastor, I'm joking. Chilling with y'all, I'm joking. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think, but no, I'm not even going to dig deep there. We'll get into that, because I'm pretty sure you're going to have a question that leads into why, I've become such a big jokester. So I'm gonna let you kind of guide that conversation a little bit.
All right, let's keep it light for a little. There's just 2 more light questions that we gonna dig right in. I'm only giving you 2 more light, bro. And that's all I got for you. So,
nervous.
yeah, you did the first time I've ever seen you nervous like this.
Man, and I'm kind of nervous, man. I've never been this vulnerable in a public setting ever. Like, people who know me, like, you know me, Jay know me, people that know me for real. They've gotten a kind of a peek into the curtains of my life, but I've never done this on a public scale, so I'm kind of nervous.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Nervous kind of looks good on you. And what I mean when I say that is it just kind of is a different feel for those who've seen you. There's normally the stature of, yo, I got this, I'm strong, I could do whatever. And for this flip side of vulnerability and nervousness that nobody's really ever seen, this good, this good. But I promise you, I'm gonna ease you, I'm gonna guide you in. I got you. Who are your top 3 favorite comics of all time?
Top 3 favorite comics of all time.
All time.
Cedric the Entertainer, that's for sure. Um,
I did not see that one coming, and I know your commentation didn't see of all time. I didn't see that one. Okay.
man, I've been a huge Ced fan, man, forever. I love Cedric the Entertainer. Um, Let me see. Um, Eddie Murphy, for sure. Um, Dang, that third spot, man. I'm gonna have to go with Michael Collier.
I was hoping he was gonna be there, but you talk about him.
Yeah. Man, that dude is he is super funny, man. He is that dude, man. Oh no, he got that raw, rugged funny. That he's like, I don't care what's about to come out my mouth and who would offend type funny. I love that. Kind of reminds me of himself.
So anybody who knows any little bit about you or sees you on social media or has heard you teach and preach and talk, they know you have great skills as an orator. And through some conversations with some people, I've come to find out that you really love communication. Like it is something that's kind of not a hidden passion of yours, but it's been said is a passion of yours. So my question there is, where did you get your love of communication from?
Um, I don't know, man. I think that's one of those traits about me that's been kind of it's just it's in me. I was shaped in purpose, man, and being able to be an effective communicator has always been important to me. Not just in terms of delivering the word of God, but you know, I used to stand up on tables and preach when I was like 5 years old at elementary school.
I heard about that.
And you heard about that. Uh, I've always just wanted to communicate with people, man. I don't know. I think it's just an inherent nature of me um, to just want to have people's attention and not just have their attention for the sake of it being on me, but I've always felt like I've had something to say. I've had something to offer. Um, and that makes me nervous sometimes because I don't know where it comes from. It just, I don't know. It's like as I pour, it's being poured type thing. And so I don't know, man. I hate bad communication.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the biggest things is I hate bad communication in the sense that, you know, say what you mean, say it clearly. Don't sugarcoat it, don't cut around it, but get to the point and make sure that people heard you the first time. And that's kind of my mantra is like, okay, even when I'm talking to my kids, like, they call and they try to beat around the bush or whatever the case may be, and I'm just like, all right, get to the point. What do you call it for? It's like communicate. Like let's get to it. And we can exchange the pleasantries of the conversation after we get to the meat of it, type thing. I don't know. I just really hate bad communication, especially when it comes to preaching. Man, I've listened to some people butcher text over the years, man. And I'll be like, you got to do better.
All right, enough of that fluff stuff. Time to
That was
push you off the cliff. Oh, no,
that
for where we're going and some of these questions I got for you. Oh, that was absolutely fluff. We're gonna push you off the cliff now. Jump right into it. You've been pastoring for 18 years. You accepted your call to preach at age 8, which means you have about 32 years of ministry under your belt. You have several churches under your leadership. With all that being said, and all those things that you have and experience that you have, why have you not fully accepted your call into the office of the apostle? Told you we go. I told you pushing you right off a cliff, bro. We going right into it.
I wrestle with the apostolic. Uh, I wrestle with it. I wrestle with what it means. I wrestle with its purpose in today's climate. I wrestle with whether or not it was God's intention for there to be succession in that office. Um, I wrestle with being labeled and lumped with others in that likeness. I don't know. It's almost, I don't know. That's so hard, man. It's I cannot say 100% that I am a firm believer in modern day apostles. If that's um, but I'm not discounting it. I've always felt like the anointing that God has had on my life was apostle like. I just feel like it's not that. I don't know. Um, and so that's I think that's the biggest reason why I struggle with embracing it. And I know a lot of people look at my ministry, especially people that are close to me and know exactly what I'm doing and where I'm at in ministry. They have questions, on why, I don't walk into certain things or accept certain things or embrace certain things. I'm very cautious to call myself anything. Um, it took me 18 years to wrap my head around being a pastor, and I'm still wrapping my head around it. I'm still learning it every single day. And I know that with new levels brings a greater level of responsibility, commitment, vulnerability, and just trust. And to be honest, Jesse, I'm just now learning how to trust God as a pastor, let alone a pastor of pastors. And I just don't want to walk into something too soon or out of season that's never been, um, a goal of mine. Even though I've known pastoring and preaching has been on my life my whole life. Um, I don't do anything lightly. I don't do anything without caution, because I want to be careful. Um, the steps that I take, I want to make sure that my steps are ordered by God. And it's so easy for me to, for people to hear what people say and what they see about your life, and you be like, and then you take it and you run with it. But at the end of the day, it's like God's timing is what's important, and then also understanding exactly what the apostle means for me, because it cannot look like what it meant for the original chosen one. They tangibly walk with Jesus, and I don't know. I don't know that I can embrace it like that.
I got thoughts on that, but we'll talk about that off air. But I
No,
feel
man.
you. I promise I feel you. No, because see, some things, even though you're being vulnerable, some things are not for public consumption just yet. I'm learning more and more. The more, for lack of a better term, public I get, the more private at the same time I have to be, or at least cautious of what I allow to be public. And so I'm learning now more to, especially for those like yourself I have a relationship with, I don't need to say on air what I can call you and say.
Mhm.
See what I'm saying? So let's shift gears. We still gonna go, still going deep, still dealing with this arena portion is what I call the man. This is the topic of the man. So that was the first question in the man. Here's the next question in the man it's a two-part question. Those who really know you have a heart for politics. The first part of this question is, what is your opinion of the current political landscape as it relates to the church?
I can't remember his name off the campaign, but if I can borrow uh, a slogan from him, it's a mess. um, it is. I think the politics of church is just as messy as the politics of the United States of America right now, and that's my to God's honest opinion. Uh, you can almost look at them one and the same at this point and wonder and question, where did we get off? Where did we go wrong? How did we get here? Um, it's almost polarizing. Well, no, it's not almost polarizing. It is polarizing to see the current state of the church, the current state of affairs in general.
No,
And
not the church. I mean actual politics,
uh,
national politics, the current landscape as it relates to how they deal with the church and how the church deals with with
okay,
politics.
all right, thanks for clarifying that. Because I was ready to go into it. My bad. I just
Oh no, that we gonna come to that, but that's a
uh,
little later down the road.
so your question is how do I feel about it as the church relates to what's going on, or you know,
Kind of both how politics are relating to the church, especially the black church, and how the church is relating to politics. You know, you at this time of year, you always are seeing whether it's national or on the local level. Politicians start coming into churches they've never even looked at before and allowed a platform to speak on a Sunday morning to the people about what they're looking to do for the people. And there are different pastors who will push the agenda of particular politicians to the people in very subtle ways. And soon as they're elected or the election is over, the church in itself, especially again the black church, seems to be a forgotten thing unless there comes up a black issue. And so, with all of that, and how we now have Kamala Harris running as the first woman black president of the United States, she's the first to do it in this manner. Well, the first to do it in this manner, this closely. If you know your history, you know she's not the first, but
right.
she's the first to get this far. What do you see as the landscape of politics as it relates to the church and how the church is relating to politics as well? Should there be a shift? Should we be doing something different, demanding something more, and how do we go about that?
It's a very complicated subject because in a sense, I think that the church is expecting politics to do what we should be doing for ourselves as it relates to the church. And I think the church has to clear up its messaging before it could hold politicians to be convicted over their messaging. And I think the church has to clear up the way it makes promises before we can really delve into how politicians come into our churches and make promises. It's a tricky thing because you don't want to dictate how people view, but at the same time, you want people to be informed. And I think that the church has a responsibility to encourage its members, its partners, and other leaders to be as informed on the issues and the policies as possible. I have to accept the fact that everybody in my congregation is not going to vote the same way that I vote. I have to accept the fact that everybody in my congregation doesn't have the same level of importance on certain issues that I might have. But at the same time, my job as a pastor is to engage my congregation, my parishioners, and really understand what their thoughts are and where they're leaning so that I can talk to them as a collective without dictating or determining for them which way they should perceive things or, cast their vote or whatever the case may be. Um, I think the church has to be involved, but at the same time, like I was saying earlier, I think the church has to do a better job at policing its own concerns internally before we can expect anything from these politicians, anything like that. Because we can't be upset about what they are or aren't doing. When we have issues with keeping our words on the inside in the first place. So I don't know. It's a complicated conversation. I have so much more to say on it, but I'm gonna leave it there for now.
All right. Well, part two of this question, and you didn't know you were teeing this question up. Do you yourself have any political aspirations?
I do actually. I don't know how high they go, but I've always talked about starting, on a local level with like city council or something like that. Maybe running for mayor of a locale, um, maybe a state representative or something of that nature. I definitely have aspirations. I've always had. I think I've people who know me know that I'm just as passionate about politics as I am about ministry. Actually, they kind of, for me anyway, they kind of go hand in hand. Um, because I consider myself more than just a pastor, but a community advocate. I'm a change agent, and I understand that, change is not just in the house of God, but it also has to be on a community level. Like I can preach change in the church and all that kind of stuff all I want to, but I also have to be a part of the thing that touches the pulse of the community and people's everyday lives. And so I definitely see myself getting into politics at some point.
Okay. So earlier we talked about your sense of humor, and you yourself described yourself as petty, which I concur with. And anybody who knows you will concur with that. It's not in a bad way. It's just you. But do you feel your brand of humor helps or hurts your ability to win souls, especially for those who mostly only know you from social media?
Um, no, I don't think it hurts. And here's why. Um, I think I think it hurts more people who are already saved than it does people who aren't. And I used to sit and I wrestle with this, and I get this question a lot from people, different people. Like, you're a pastor. How can you talk like that? How can you be that type of a jokester or whatever the case? How can you be so petty? At the same time, is I've never been like my peers, and for a long time, I used to wrestle with that because I thought something was wrong with me. It's like, why can't I be, dignified and as serious and stern in my walk and my faith as some of these other guys. Um, but at the same time, I look at their successes, and most of them are church success. And I never wanted to be church success. I wanted to be people success. I wanted to be street successful. God never called me to win the church, he called me to win souls. And when I began to look at who was complaining and who wasn't, I realized that it was the people in the streets who were ones hitting me up asking for prayer, telling me like, "Hey man, I really respect the fact that you're a pastor and you're human, and all that kind of stuff." It was always a church that had issues, you know what I'm saying? And I'm sure there are people in the world that have issues too, but when I weigh the response between the two, overwhelmingly the streets rock with me. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like as long as I have their ear, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Now, of course, as I've grown and I've matured in my faith and in my witness and my purpose, even in my age, I've scaled back a lot of things. I'm not as off the cuff as I used to be. I'm a little more seasoned and disciplined with my word choices and just the conversations that I, entertain on a public scale. But at the end of the day, one of the things that I had to learn to embrace was my unique. And I realized, like, you're called to preach, I'm called to preach, but we're not called to preach to the same people. We're not called to preach the same ministry or pastor the same ministry. And so I can't do what you do like you do and expect me to be effective in what God has purposed me to be and vice versa. And so I've learned to embrace my identity as an individual and my identity in Him, because it is my uniqueness that draws who I'm supposed to draw. If I'm trying to emulate and imitate everybody else or do it the way that the church thinks that I should do it, I'm looking at the fabric of the church. The church is not really reaching out to the streets, not really reaching out to the souls. We're okay with sitting up in our churches and our pulpits and having a good time and recycling membership and members from other churches and calling it growth. I'm not okay with that. My endeavor every time I've planted a church has always been, I would like to see a church that was 95 or better percent new believers. Like that's my goal. And I think the 5% is supposed to be the core that helps me execute the vision to make that happen. But if your church is, if you start a church and it's 90% church people, then did you really start a church? Or did you start another, organization within the scope of church? And so, I get a lot of feedback on it. And it used to bother me, but it doesn't anymore. It doesn't anymore because I'm looking at the people who speak, and a lot of times there people are not doing nothing at all.
That's a
like
fact.
you don't even invite people to your church, or haven't even witnessed since you got saved or anything like that, but yet you have so much of an opinion about what I'm doing 10, 12 churches in. You know, I've been all over this country, man, just loving people to Christ. And I wouldn't change that for the world. I won't change me for the world. I can grow, I can evolve, I can be better. And that's what I intend to do. But I'm not changing me in terms of who I am. I don't think that was God's plan in the first place.
I like it. I like it. Okay. So then, and I have a feeling I know how you're going to answer this question, so I'm probably going to have to poke and prod and pull a little bit on this one. But what drives JC?
People. Um, and I know the conventional answer should have been, Jesus, but people. I love people the way God loves people, flaws and all. Um, I was talking to someone last week, and I had the opportunity to share my vision. And even I talked to somebody yesterday, and I was, asking them about, the city, the current environment that I'm in, and all that kind of stuff. And I said, who should I stay away from? Who should I connect to? And they were basically saying, stay away from everybody, connect to no one. The devil has won that territory. No getting it back. And that triggered me in a way, not in an angry sense, but I told them simply, I'm a hopeless change mentor. You hear about hopeless
Mm-hmm.
work. I'm a hopeless change mentor. I just believe in change. I believe it's possible. I believe it's God's will. And I believe there's nothing too hard for God. Like, I don't care what you say about this person. I don't care what you say about this area, this city, this state, whatever. If God said it, I believe it, and people drive me. I want to see people win. I want to see people better. I want to see people just live out, their potential, not the potential that they think they have, but the potential that God knows that they have. Living out what God put on them, in them, that they didn't even know existed. And I just want to see people move empowered. Like, we don't have to accept, what we see. We don't have to accept life circumstances and accept, that things just are the way they are. That, well, maybe this is just what God want me to go through at this moment, whatever the case may be. Because even in that messaging, it's a sound of defeat. And God never called us to live defeated, And so people drive me because I believe in people. I believe in God. I believe that God put us here to do something beautiful and grand and beyond ourselves. And it's my job. It is my purpose to pull that out of people. And I'm not going to rest until, he says, well done.
Okay. Let's shift gears again. It is said children are your priority. Everyone I talk to, when I ask them what do they think is JC's number one priority, the common answer has always been your children, which as a parent I can relate. how much of you do you see in your children?
I see all of me and my children in different ways, honestly. Um, I don't know. It's like I look at my kids and they're me at different stages of my life. Um, I think there's no one of them that is more like me. I think that all of them put together make up me. And so I see it just in the simple things, whether it's their education, whether it's, the inclination for music or, just, my second to oldest is, embracing purpose. My oldest loves to draw and, um, was in studying for architecture. Um, and I think there's a little bit of me in all of them. And as far as them being my number one priority, that is true. Um, they are, like, honestly. Um, I don't I don't do anything, especially at this stage in my life, that is not conscious of them first and foremost. Um, I don't make decisions that are for me. I make them for them, and that comes with a lot of sacrifice. But at the same time, it wasn't always that way. And I think that my dedication and my commitment to them now has a lot to do with the fact that, early on as a father, I missed the mark big time. Um, because I prioritize my ambitions and I prioritize my ministry. And as a casualty of that, my two oldest children paid the price for that grade. And I think that's the part that people don't know is like they were always on my heart and on my mind, but I was not there for them in the way that I should have been as a father. And it took a lot of growth and maturity and self evaluation and reflection and people in my life um, who were more seasoned than I to really make me wake up and see, like, hey, you there for everybody else, but you're not there for your children. And so now it's like, okay, they come first. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make whatever decision I gotta make, whether it comes to when it comes to, where I live, where I work, all that kind of stuff. It's always gonna be because I need to make sure that I'm in a better position to do more for them. But at the same time, um, they're more of my primary focus now than they were ever been before because, like I said, I got it so wrong in the beginning. And I think that if you had a conversation with my two oldest girls, they would agree. There was a lot of tension um, between the oldest two and the younger two, um, and a lot of that had to do too also with the fact that you know my two oldest girls never lived with me permanently. Then they have my three younger children who have always lived, and so I'm sure that where there was a lot of resentment there because they got a part of me that they never got to experience. And I didn't do enough to make that right for them. And so I've worked through correcting my mistakes, and I can't make up for missed time and the times that I should have been there more for them. Um, but my focus now is showing up as much as I can and as best as I can now, because they're coming into their own as women, especially. My second oldest is getting ready to graduate high school. My oldest made me a grandpappy, two grandsons now. So I just realized that in order for me to be better for people, I have to be better for them.
Speaking of being better, let's talk relationships. You've been divorced, and I know as a formerly divorced person, sometimes the hardest thing to do in the midst of and shortly after the fact is look at yourself. So now that you're a little further along, well, a lot further along, because it's been some years now, what have you learned from your past marriage and subsequent divorce that has made you better?
Well, the biggest thing I learned is you know, don't make decisions for the wrong reason. Um, that was the biggest thing. And I've been very candid about this. Uh, though there were a lot of things that transpired in my marriage. Some my fault, some not. I take full responsibility for its demise because I should have never allowed uh, it to be in the first place, so to speak. Um, and so everything that happened and transpired, it was because I did not have the maturity and the wisdom to make the right decision from the gate. That's just basically what it comes down to. So I take full responsibility for it. And that's one of the lessons that I have to learn too. Is that, it's so easy to look at the situation and everything that transpired and pass the blame and say, yeah, she did this or she did that or whatever the case may be. But even in their wrong, how do you respond? Was your response right? Because if your response was wrong, you were equally as wrong as them, and vice versa. Um, but I went into my marriage for the wrong reason. She was pregnant with Taylor, and I was the pastor. Granted, when I met her, I was kind of on a in a different place with God because I had went through some things with some other churches that kind of broke me, and I was almost ready to walk away from ministry altogether because I felt like God broke. And so it was a very difficult season of my life, and I made decisions in that season that had lifetime consequences, and at the same time lifetime blessings. Um, but I was not in the right place uh, when it transpired, and I got married because I felt like it was the right thing to do. I was a pastor. I needed to make an honest woman of this person, um, and she asked me, I agreed. That's just and so it was not a decision of purpose. It was not a decision of you was good for my life and I'm what's good for your life. I put her in a position that was very complicated and compromising because it was not something that she was purposeful. I was not honest about who I was and what it would require to be in a relationship with somebody like me. And so I had certain expectations that I did not disclose. And because of that, it created a lot of tension and friction and frustration in my marriage. Um, and so I had to learn to be more honest, um, not just with myself, but with others. And that at the end of the day, we have to, every decision that we make is a decision on purpose. And it has purposeful consequences if we are not making the right decisions conducive to our purpose. And I'm at a place now where almost I would say that I'm pretty comfortable with being single because I don't have to make that same mistake again. Um, but at the same time, I know that that is not God's will for me. It's not my will for myself. It's just almost a place of settling in comfortability, and that's something that I preach against. So I'm working my way into embracing the fact that I need a wife, and I should probably, be a little more serious about that. Um, and I think that I don't, not just I need it, my wife needs to see. I mean, my kid needs to see. So, yeah.
I gotta pat myself on the back for half a second. I'm good. I'm good. I'm teeing these questions up, and I got you leading right into the next question. I be looking at. I'm good. I'm good. Because my next question you kind of answered, but I'm gonna ask it anyway because I want it to be definitive and on the record. Do you want to get married again?
I do. I do.
Is there anyone currently in your life?
Really, Jesse?
Hey, you said none was off limits. I got we going a total sexual relationship. We peeling back these layers.
Wow. Man, this is live on Instagram. You about to, man, I'm about to get so many unfollows behind this. No, just I'll say this. I know who I want.
Okay. Wonder once again, just tee them up because my very next question on the same card I got right here. What are you looking for in a wife? Because you say you know who you want, so
I am looking for my opposite.
ooh, I like that. Okay.
Because if she's everything that I am, what do I need her for? And so I need somebody that's going to balance me out, but at the same time know how to pull me in. Um, there's a side of me that a lot of people aren't privy to that I think you may know a little bit about this, but when it comes to what I've been purposed to do, I'm very serious. And when I lock in on purpose, it's hard for me to consider anything or anyone else. And that's just me being honest. And so I get into these spaces where purpose is all I can think about. It's all I can, put my thoughts on. It's all that I can breathe at that moment. It's literally air I breathe. And especially because I'm an intercessor and I feel the weight of people. And I don't know how to shut that off at all. It's never been my strong suit. It's never been a skill of mine to be able to flip the switch and say, okay, time to land this plane. Even when I'm kicking it with my friends, and you notice, a conversation with me can switch in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
Joking, talking about the most ridiculous whatever. And the minute something triggers purpose inside of me, we're locking in on that. We're not leaving that until whatever it is that we need to accomplish in that moment is accomplished. And that, even when I'm on the phone with a certain someone and we're having, this light conversation, man, the trigger for the preacher in me it's like I can go from appreciating you and complimenting you to encouraging you and prophesying over your life in an instant. And so she has to be my opposite. She has to be able to land my plane. She has to be able to be strong enough to pray and intercede the way that I intercede for others, because that's what it's going to take to bring me off that mountain. Gotta be a freak. Definitely gotta be a freak. You gotta be with the smoke. And got a little scripture I won't mind. But she gotta be comfortable in her own skin. Like, don't do things because you think that's what I want you to do. Be the person I like, not the person you think I'm gonna like. And that's, I don't know, man. That's the least complicated way that I can put it, Jesse. I don't know.
See, you answered the next question, but I'm gonna tell you what it was. You ain't gotta re-answer it. I was gonna help get you there to that uncomplicated state because my next question was gonna be this version of JC. What does it take for a woman who is serious about you to be with you? But you kind of answered that. It's not the same question as what are you looking for, but you actually answered both. You answered what you're looking for and what it's going to take for that person who's actually serious about you to be with you. I love the statement of they got to be the opposite of you, because if they're everything that you are, essentially, what do you need them for?
Yeah. And let me add something to that, because she's got to be either a great mother or great motherly like. Um, that's important to me. I can't see bringing anybody around my life in my life that cannot embrace, handle, accept, help nurture my children. You've got to be just as much as a role model for them and I require that for every woman that comes to their life to do well. And yes, they have a mother, but we're talking about somebody who's going to be in my intimate space on a consistent basis. You have to be able to set an example, a positive one for them to glean from. That's very important. You got to be open. Like I don't like boring. Like the minute you start talking about conversations that you won't have and things that you know, all that kind of stuff, I'm instantly turned off, because at the end of the day, I'm a very, complex person. I talk about everything. My range is, and you might get a whole bunch of everything in one conversation that you don't think you should have. We might broach the subject of sex and scripture in the same conversation. That's just the type of person that I am. And so the minute you tell me that, certain conversations or things that are off the table, because you need to be able to go there with. You need to be an intellectual. You need to be spiritual. You need to have a sense of humor. You need to. Here I am naming a whole bunch of stuff I couldn't name earlier, but I guess it's appropriate because you know what? Yeah, I'm not settling for anything less than what I need. When God told Adam it was not good for him to be alone, it's because there was a need. There was something that needed to be fulfilled in Adam and in his life. And I'm realizing more now than ever that I can't want you in my life just because I want you. I want you in my life because I need you. And if I identify that needing you, then I'll lock in with you. But if it's like a bunch of ways, for one, I'm not into a whole bunch of, preliminaries. Like once I see what I want and I realize I need you in my life, like, I don't have the same time that everybody else has. Everybody else has their time windows of how long they got to date somebody and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just watching people that I grew up with die, never reaching their potential, never fulfilling their purpose, never marrying the love of their life and all that other good stuff. And it's like, I ain't got time for that. Like, if you're going to come into my life, what are we doing? Let's not play games. Let's and I think that's why I'm very cautious in terms of who I communicate with and have conversations with, because I know me, I don't want to waste my time. I don't have time to waste. My kids got so much going on, and then I got so much going on, or whatever the case may be. And I told somebody the other day, man, it's going to be, you got to be worth jeopardizing the peace of my singleness for me to bring you into my intimate space.
Mm-hmm. So you have joked before. Well, it really wasn't a joke, but I'll say it for the sake of the question. You've joked before that you don't really want a church woman. Here's a question I don't know if anybody has actually asked you to cause you to think about. And I get I want somebody opposite of me. Trust me, I understand it. You've met my wife. There are no two different people on the face of the planet than her and I in the same space, right?
Right.
At the same time, how then can a woman who wants to be with you be able to fully relate to all sides of you if they don't have that aspect as well?
She can't. But I think
But isn't that needed?
It's not necessarily, but I think that in a sense, people grow into to that. It's like you got to be open to it. Like you may not be able to check all the boxes now, but at some point, eventually, you got to be able to check that box, and that's going to be determined in your willingness to grow, to evolve, and to really. Because I don't want to church. I mean, like I don't, man. You know, even even when I'm like dealing with somebody or like interested in somebody, I don't know. It's something that triggers the inside of me when they get to fussing a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I don't know why. I don't know why. Okay, I get it. You love the Lord, but listen, and we've had this conversation before. Every now and then, we just gonna have to be us, and you're gonna have to be human, land that plane, be open to conversation outside of the Word of God. And yeah, like I'm not trying to have revival every time we have a conversation. Like
That's not what I mean by church growth, and that's where I think, and this is the first pushback and or follow up you'll see in this entire thing, and I knew this was going to be the one. It's not that you have to have revival, not that's what I mean when I say church girl, but when you say you don't want a church girl, it comes, it's I know you're directing it at that, but it winds up becoming all encompassing. And that's why I put it to the portion of how can they relate to all sides of you, to be able to deal with all sides of you, because as your wife, they're gonna have to deal with all sides of you. One of the best things that has over the years has begun happening for my wife and I, because I am not an easy person to be with at all. Like, not in the least, and it's beyond all the quirks that you and some others know about me. I mean, I am not easy, right? There is something that has happened over the years where she can feel me and know where I'm going, whether naturally or spiritually, and be able to handle that moment.
mhm.
So when I'm in church and I'm getting ready to prophesy, boom, she knows it. She knows it's coming before I get there. When I'm worn out in my humanness, she hits it and knows it right before it's there. Like and we have our silly, we have our you would not believe these things have come out of our mouth moments, and then we also have our Bible studies, our churchy conversations, and it didn't, like you said, it can grow to that. It didn't start out that way, but there became this melding of the two. But there was ultimately a church girl that came out of her that wasn't there, and believe it or not, a somewhat street dude that was in me that didn't come out, that allowed us to meld. And so that's what I mean when I say, how can the person, if they're never able to have that aspect, how can they relate to all sides of you? Because you grew up in a church.
Yeah.
As much as street as you are, there's a lot of church still in you, and you have a lot of church, as you just said.
But see, when I say I don't want a church girl, I'm talking about it from the sense that all you are is church.
Okay.
I can't handle that. And like you said, it comes a point where the two become one. That process is never an instant thing. It's not an overnight thing. And I don't mind going through that process. Hold on, I think I lost him real quick. Welcome back.
Yeah, I have no idea what just happened. I'm sitting here listening to you, and my entire screen jumped to a whole another website. It jumped to my Reels website, where I clipped my stuff, and I don't know how I did it.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
it's like I was saying. It's I don't want you to be church can't just be all that you are. That's what I mean by I don't want a church girl. Like I don't like you need to be able to live a normal life. You know what I'm saying? Like there comes a time and place for everything, and every place ain't church. You know, like That's, I guess that's the best way I could put it. But like you said, there's a process of learning one another, and there's a part of her and me that will pull out of each other eventually. You don't get it all at once, but at the same time, I want what I want. It's not a church girl. Like you can love, you gotta love other things too.
So here we go. As a father who has daughters, I love asking men this question. Would you want your daughter to marry someone like you?
The me now, yeah, absolutely. Old me, hell no. No, no, bro. I was I was a bad man. Like, even though I grew up in church, man, I was not a good person to date. Like, I wasn't. It took this. This is a product of a lot of growth and prayer. A lot of self realization and healing and all kind of stuff, man. But yeah, they marry somebody like me now. Yeah, absolutely. They might not
Okay.
like certain aspects of him because I'm very frugal, cheap. But outside of that, great.
So this next section is kind of in that same vein. This is the fathering section, but it's not just dealing with you as a father in the natural. It is both father in the natural and in the spiritual. So, do you have, let's start with the natural, do you have aspirations for your children to go into ministry, knowing all that you have been through yourself in ministry?
I, honestly, I want it for no one person. Um, it's hard. Real ministry is hard. It's complicated. But I always wondered, like, who, if any of them, would be the one, or if all of them. And I think that, in a sense, all of them have little semblances and glimmers of it, but it's not necessarily an aspiration of mine. I personally just want them to be whoever God purposed them to be. And it may not look like what I was purposed to be. I hope not, because this is hard. But in the same token, if that's the path that God has them on and they decide to accept and embrace that call, then I'll be there to help nurture. That's something that, we've been dealing with recently with my second oldest, because remember I said, I always wondered who, and it is she. And so now I have a responsibility to be a better example at what I do so that she can be the best at what she does.
What are some of the similarities between being a father in the natural and being a father in the gospel?
Well, you just want the best for your children, period. Um, and you'll sacrifice whatever you got to see to make it happen, to see it through. Um, I know for me, I don't like seeing natural children or spiritual children be beneath their capacity. It's like, why won't you capitalize on what God put inside of you? Why don't you want more? Why aren't you, serious natured about certain aspects of your life? Why is everything a joke? And it's to be asking that is literally, but at the same time, underneath those jokes, it's all serious business. And so I think the similarities is this, and me wanting them to be the best that they can be, and not in a sense, like I said earlier, they think they can be, but they got it. But
For your natural children, what are you most proud of as it relates to them?
they're intelligent. Um, all my kids are geniuses, and I'm very, very, very proud of that. Um, from the oldest to the youngest, they've all been honor students. They've all received numerous accolades and achievements for their academics. Um, my second oldest has pretty much got accepted into every college that she's applied for the most part. She's always posted a new one almost every day on her Instagram story or the acceptance letter. Because my children are that damn good, they're that amazing, and so I'm proud that they're taking the things that they should take seriously serious. And you don't get that with a lot of kids these days. You know, a lot of parents are not really encouraging education the way that they should. You know, and so the consequence of that is that you got a lot of people, a lot of children who are growing up not aspiring to be much of anything. You know, when we were growing up, being firefighters, cool, being architects, cool, being engineers, cool, being doctors and lawyers, cool. Now everybody wants to be an influencer, and everybody wants to be viral, and everybody wants to have their moment. And I always wonder, like, when I get older, who's going to be there to care for me and treat me? If I get sick, if
Mhm.
education is not important, you know. So I'm thankful that they take that very serious and they want to be something about it. I think that's what I'm most proud of.
What things do you pull from with how you were raised to aid in raising your children?
I mean, the focus on education for one, um, and then also just making sure that they're engaged with God uh, as much as possible. My mom, she never really, even though we were in church pretty much all the time, never forced it. We were blessed and fortunate enough for my mom to have us in places and spaces that we wanted to be at, you know. So it was never boring for us. And so I try to make sure that I, get my kids in that same type of environment and situation too. Um, but just our focus on God and in education, I think is the biggest similarity um, that you'll see. I try to encourage entrepreneurship as much as I can because um, I try to teach my kids like, look, nothing is given to you. You got to work for it, And so when they ask me for money, it's like, all right, how you gonna earn this? What are you gonna do for it? Why do you need it? What is the goal here? And I try to teach them at the same time that every day does not require you to spend money. Like every time you open your eyes, there should not be a thought of what can I spend or buy today. And that's something that was also instilled in me, coming up. Because we learned how to enjoy life and have fun without spending money.
Hmm.
Kids don't know that these days. Everything has to be bought. And so, yeah, there's some of the similarities.
Okay. What, because you have to co parent and have been co parenting, what are some of the hardest things about co parenting? The deep sigh. Y'all who don't know JC, you don't understand what that face and that deep breath meant. I felt it and heard every word.
we, I can't answer this question. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's great where it's great, but it's not hell. Uh,
Well, I won't push it because I have a one that kind of piggybacks off. It may take some of the pressure off of that kind of question. What have you learned while co-parenting that makes you or has made you a better parent and a better pastor?
I've learned that, especially in this season, I've learned that there are no excuses. You get it done, you make it happen, um, regardless whether you co-parent or not co-parent, whether you're doing it together, or you're doing it alone. When it comes to kids, you make it happen. And I'm learning that now, and I'm sure that's a lesson that my older two daughters' mom uh, learned earlier. Because, like I said earlier, you know, the burden of responsibility rests heavily on them more so in the early starts of the stages of their lives because I was not what I needed to be. And I understand their journey now more now than I did before because in so many ways their journey I'm living it, having to be that one to carry the burden of responsibility. Um, so yeah, that's that's how as far as I want to get into it. So, yeah.
No worries, no worries. That's all we got on father. I guess we're gonna take what I'm calling the deep dive into the miscellaneous. This is gonna be some stuff that you're gonna say to yourself, this Negro really went into his research bag to find out about me. Some of it's kind of light, but it's deep for folk who don't know you. So tell us about partnering with Paul R. Trailer and the Construction 2 Group.
Hey,
Yeah. I told you I was in my research bag, dog.
um, so I've always had an affection for architecture. In fact, that's what I wanted to be growing up. I wanted to be an architect. Um, I had scholarships to go to schools that um, had heavy emphasis on architecture. But since I was like, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 years old, I had been drafting like full scale blueprints. And my mom she used to go to this construction store called Atlas Construction,
Like twice a week.
buy me rolls of drafting paper, and I would put them up on the wall. And it's crazy because I had an affection for architecture, but I could only design churches. Like I
I was told
never
that too.
could figure out houses, commercial buildings. Still to this day, I mean, literally lay out all of it:
Like New
plumbing,
Salem.
plumbing, wiring, HVAC, everything, inside, outside, pews, sound system, wire, everything. I can only see churches, and so um, my pastor's brother um used to show off some of my drawings, and that's how I got connected with different like architects and church builders and stuff like that. And some of over the years, some of my work was used. Um, but I was not a licensed architect or anything like that, and so it was basically more so my bare bones ideas of my drawings and stuff like that. So yeah, man, yeah, I had a very interesting childhood to say the least.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
So, for example, little known fact about JC, JC is a twin within himself. So, do you think that that was an early indication that you would be special? For those who don't know what I'm talking about, JC's mom was pregnant with twins, and at some point, JC ate his brother or sister. We don't know. The twin was not absorbed into the placenta, and so it was absorbed into JC. So this is why I say he's a twin within himself. He was
So
hungry even at that, even in the womb. So, do you think, however, that was an early indication that you'd be something special?
Could be, but it could also explain the duality of me. Um, how I'm such a dynamic person. And that's probably why the dynamics of conversation or just being in my presence shifts in an instant. It's like two totally different people. It's like, and they somehow agree in a weird, twisted way. They're on two totally different spectrums, but somehow they marry one another so perfect. And so it's a strong possibility that that's what makes me so unique and so significant is that I'm kind of living out life too.
All right, you're gonna need to take a deep breath for this one. This one is the heavy portion of the deep dive miscellaneous, and I say this only because I know you. I know you, so I know that this is not. This one might get a little touchy for you. All right, we're gonna breach a touchy subject real quick. Just a few quick questions on this touchy one. I'm gonna hit it, leave it alone. I didn't even want to go too deep into it because I respect you and I know how you feel about it. But however, let's take a quick conversation about your father. There's a kind of strained relationship there. So how difficult is it? Huh? How difficult is it for you not having what most would call a solid relationship with your father?
I don't know that it's easy or difficult because I don't know what I'm missing, honestly, other than outside of what I give my kids. I don't know, man. It's such a complex thing. Um, and I think it's because there's not been a whole bunch of truth surrounding the mystery of my father. Um, who he is, what he's done, all that kind of stuff, why he's not here. And I know why he's not here is because of what he's done, but it's just never been a lot of transparency and honesty surrounding that subject for me. And I think that's affected a lot. I think the hardest part of not having a working relationship with him, I think the hardest parts was when I was younger. Um, because not having a relationship with him made me resent so many other people. Um, and I've never shared this with my brothers or anything like that, man, but I'm gonna share it here. I used to resent them so much, um, surrounding my father, and it was just a simple, um, something so simple they used to say. And even though, like, their dad is who he is, or whatever the case may be, he at least, they at least seen him, every now. But they used to say something that used to really trigger me, and because we don't have the same father, and they used to say, "Man, your dad was such a good man. He was a good dad," and that bothered me. Um, it bothered me so much because, like, first of all, niggas, that ain't your dad. Why are you telling me, about the experience you had with my dad? Is something that I never.
Oh, yo, it is freezing again. Oh, there we go.
Are we
There,
back?
you back. You back. You back.
So my dad has been gone since I was like a week old, and so I don't know him outside of prison. You know what I'm saying? My aunt, she used to take me to see him every once in a while when I was younger, growing up, and she would go visit him, whatever. But outside of that, I think I've only seen him in person by myself like once, and then and that was the confronted situation. But then we may have like video visited like a couple times, but nothing real deep there. But I used to just grow up hearing people talking about how great my dad was, how involved he was in their lives and stuff like that, and it's like, bro, I've never. I don't know nothing about that. So why are you telling me? Like, I don't want to hear that. And for that reason, I used to like just want to be kind of isolated from everybody. Like, you have something that I didn't have that I should have had, so to speak. So that was hard for me. And sometimes, even to this day, if I hear it, it might trigger me a little bit because, I had to learn everything without him. You know what I'm saying? Like, everything, literally. Tie my shoes, ride a bike, you know, do my homework, um, find the Lord, become a father, become a grandparent. And even like to this day, like I try to like, include him and stuff like that. Like I at least told him that he had grandkids or whatever. But, you know, and I think that when I talk to him, it doesn't make it any easier too because like I'll listen to him, you only get 30 minutes of them calls and 29 of them is I'm talking about himself. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm good. Grandkids good. Great grandkids good. Just in case you were wondering type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because, obviously life outside here, is not as eventful as, you know, 20 hours lockdown. So like, oh no, I don't know. It's still strange. And I think that strain in that relationship with him, it affects it affected so many different areas of my life. Just how I approach fatherhood, how I approach life, how involved I am with people, how isolated I am with people. Um, Even in my relationships, it's affected it to a certain standpoint because of what he's in there for. And I used to wonder, like, man, I hope that's not like a hereditary trait. I don't know much about his side of the family, but the guys that I did met, they either alcoholics, drug abusers, or womanizers. Outside of my uncle Easy, it's like my uncle Morris is only two people that I knew that were decent, basically, on that side of the family. So as far as the men are concerned, anyway, some solid women on that side, but as far as the men that I know on that side of the family, I only know two of them are halfway decent outside of like the descendants of his, brothers and sisters and my cousins and stuff. We're all pretty solid to a extent, uh, but outside of that, I don't know. I just had a lot of resentment towards him. I had a lot of resentment also towards that side of the family because, realistically, only one person really stepped up my whole life on that side of the family that, really tried to make me feel like family, like I had something over there, and that was my aunt. And then a couple of years ago, that kind of got strained. So, a lot of layers to that.
All right. See, I'm not gonna push no more. That was on. You kind of already answered the follow up, so I don't need to go into that one. So we off that one. I just want like again, we talking about peeling back the layers. That's a big layer. So that's so we going. I figured that was gonna be heavy. We're gonna take you up now.
No, you
Bring
can,
you.
do your thing. We
He wants to
here.
bring. Oh no, I only had the two, and like I said, the second one you kind of answered. I had to follow up to it, but you answered it. You answered it. So here's what the follow up to it was how has that strained relationship influenced how you are as a pastor, how you were as a husband, and how you are as a father, and you kind of answered that. So I don't need to reiterate because you really kind of answered it. But I'm gonna bring you up. We gonna level this one up, lighten it up slightly. You grew up in a house where it wasn't uncommon to see kids in less fortunate situations continually receiving help from your mother. I believe the count is something like 40 plus children altogether, along with you and your brothers and sisters that were in that house receiving love and support and attention, things like that from your mom. Where most kids would probably have resented that it seems like you have become a very compassionate person towards people. And do you think that is where the root of that comes from, seeing how your mom was so willing to jump in and help out folk who she didn't have to do that before?
Honestly, to be quite honest with you, I don't know how that made me so passionate about helping others, because I absolutely hated that,
Oh,
honestly. Um, with a passion. And I think that's why I don't like a lot of people in my space now. Because we always had to share space. It was always somebody coming in, that needed, a place to stay, or was going through some tough times in their home with their parents, or whatever the case may be. So, you know, as a consequence, well, not a consequence, but as a product of that, I have a lot of, my mother has a lot of sons and daughters. And I used to hate that aspect, honestly. It was like, bro, when you going home? Like, it's always, because the more people you add to the equation, the less you feel like you're getting. You know what I'm saying? And so, in some ways, it felt like, in a sense, I had to do for myself. You know, like I learned how to cook, or I started my own businesses. Very young, because I just felt like that was the only way that I was going to get like fully what I needed, because there was always somebody else that had a need that was around. You know what I'm saying? So I hated that aspect, to this day. Like my brothers and them are very close. I mean, we're all kind of close, you know what I'm saying? And when I see them, of course it's a good time and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm not as close to all those others as like my older brothers are, because for me, and I think it stems back from my dad, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, you know, I'm already, missing a parent here. And the one that I do have, it's got to be that to everybody else too. And so everybody else gets the good stuff, kind of thing. And, I'm kind of like, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So I didn't like that aspect of it, but somehow, and I think that my compassion towards people really, I think that more so came from my pastor, honestly. Um, I know I used to study that man, like Pastor Troy. I used to study, like, even though I was always playful and kind of a non-conventional youth. Um, I used to study that dude, like, just his passion towards people. And I share this all the time, man. We come from a very large church, like one of the largest churches in the city at the time, probably still is to this day. Predominantly black church. Of course, you had a couple of white girls in the choir with the blonde streaks in their hair, um, but I used to watch like how after service he would stick around and talk to people, as many people as he could. But he didn't just talk people, shake hands like normal pastors would do. Like, he literally knew everybody that he was talking to, like picking apart details of their lives. And I'm just like, how is this possible? You have like 5,000 members here, and yet you're so personal with each and every one of them. And that was just inspiring to me, to have that kind of love and commitment to God and his people. And I think that's where it really comes from. And plus our church was a very big on service. Our church was built on service. One of the slogans for the building campaign was not equal giving, but equal sacrifice. And so I remember all that kind of stuff. And I think that's really where the passion came from, honestly. Because I actually hated it in the house. Like, and I'm kind of that way today. To be quite frank, like outside of my house, I'm a very loving, generous, giving type of person, but you can't stay here. Like, I don't even tell people where I live half the time. Most people don't even know what state I'm in, let alone, where I live. So, yeah.
So here's what that should absolutely make you smile from how I understand it. Tell us the story of the lady falling out of the wheelchair and rolling across the floor at higher ground.
Bro, listen. So Jay and Art and Maya and them was cutting up that night.
That ain't how I heard it.
Cutting up. And I was just there trying to enjoy, Christmas pageant and, the presence of God. And the whole night was just wrong. It was just wrong. And so the service was over. We should have been gone. But we, how black people do, we sit around talking to people and stuff like that. And one of them wheelchairs that, like, it's not really a wheelchair. It's more like a walker with a seat on it.
Yeah.
And so they were rolling this lady down while she was sitting on the seat part of it. But they rolled her down like the slope facing forward. Bruh. When she tumbled, nigga, I ran out of that church so fast because I about lost it, bro. I was like, that just not just happened in front of me. I had to get out of there because I was not going to see if that person was alright or not. I was ready to laugh, bro. I had to run out of the church literally because it was about to be a bad scene. It was about to be a bad scene.
So
and that might be all together though.
Just for the record, the way I heard it was you was the one doing the cutting up, and yeah, that's where I heard it. You was the one doing the cutting up.
Me?
Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard it was you and Art doing the cutting up. So you know who told me the story?
That must be from the Jay Jordan finish.
It was you and Art cutting up, and then that happened. Everything else you said that happened, but it was you and Art cutting up.
That's crazy. That's wild.
Here goes another deep dive blast from your past. Didn't you used to pseudo ref some of your brother's soccer games?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that? Oh, I guess I can't actually tell me how that came about.
I remember the stories of that. But the word on the street is that they were playing soccer. I got a uniform just because, and they also gave me a whistle, and I used to blow the whistle during the game or whatever. And the refs never knew what was going on or what the call was or nothing. So they had to kind of, reel me back on the whistle a little bit. That's all I know. But I don't remember it for myself, but that's what I heard.
That's kind of the way I heard it, except that it was when you blew the whistles, the refs would walk over to you and ask you what the call was, since you're the one that blew the whistle.
That's funny. They must didn't take that game very serious, did.
So tell us about, and I'm using basically quotes when I say this, so this is not a statement that is coming from me, but I'm the one asking it. Tell us about what has been called essentially your obsession with Will Smith as an actor.
Obsession.
That's the verbiage that was essentially used when talking about it was Will Smith. It's Eddie Murphy, and there was one other, but I chose Will because I know I've personally heard you talk about Will.
Man, he's just dope. Honestly, what's not to like about his acting skills, man? He can literally do any role. There's not a role that he cannot play, man. And I really respect that about him. Plus, he's my favorite rapper, actually. On my list of GOATs, Will Smith is number one. So that's a little fun fact.
One?
Yeah, he's definitely number one.
Like he's in my top at number one.
Yeah, he's definitely number one. Yeah. Number one actor, number one rapper. Like, yeah. And I versatility. Like he can drop a movie and do his own soundtrack to it.
Yeah, but no, number one, I won't push back on it because it's your interview. But number one is you, and I'm a huge Will Smith the rapper fan. I don't know anyone, including me, who has him at number one.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
that is
let's think about it. You've never heard Will Smith profanely rap.
that don't make him not number one. I've not heard Sinbad use profanity in his stand up. He ain't the number one comic of all time.
Funny, he would be definitely in my top 10.
But he ain't number one.
Yeah, I mean, because I never really watched a lot of Sinbad stand-ups, only a few.
You should
But I've
definitely do
seen
that.
Sinbad more in movies than I did his stand-up. But even his stand-up that I did watch, I thought it was funny. But you gotta understand, I've seen every Will Smith movie there is.
No, I'm not talking. I'm not dealing with the actor side.
Multiple times. I've
You
listened
said
to every,
rapper.
I've listened to every Will Smith album. Every verse, every track, no skips. Every album, multiple times.
Number one though.
Yeah.
Again, I consider myself a huge Will Smith. I have fought about Will Smith being one of the GOATs for a long time. I've always said because he didn't do the gangster rap and he did the happy rap, that he doesn't get really the credit that he deserves for opening up hip hop to the mainstream. I don't believe that rappers today would be making the kind of money that they made if Will Smith did not help make it acceptable for suburbia to listen to hip hop, right? But I still can't put him number one. Like top 5, yeah, but number one, that's tough.
Yeah, he's number one on my list.
That's and this is why it has been said your obsession with Will Smith. I get it now. you got him over Tupac, Biggie, and Denzel. That is tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unapologetically. All right, so I'm gonna move off from there because I could.
Will Smith is Jay-Z, then it's Biggie.
God, dog. Yeah, I'm gonna move on from there because we could spend a lot of time right there, and I ain't gonna do that. I got some more questions to get you, and woo, yeah, we gonna have to come back to that one day. God, dog, that is, man, I'm gonna need Philonda in here for that one. You and her have that one out, cause, God, dog. But all right, so few people who know you, well, few people know this about you, I think anyway, that you were somewhat of a kind of hood chef. Like you could throw down in the kitchen for real, for real. What is the best meal that you cook?
All of them.
Spoken like a big person. I get it.
All of them. I mean, there's nothing I can't do in the kitchen, honestly. Except I don't bake. I don't do like pie, cakes and pie. Well, I do sweet potato pie, stuff like that. But there's nothing I can't do in the kitchen on a grill. Like it's just like I love cooking. I've been trying to get on Chopped for years because I'm one of those dudes where I want to take random weird ingredients and make full course meals out of it.
Me and my wife, we listen to this. I don't know what her name is, but she starts off her reels with "Everybody's so creative," and every time I see one, I send it to her. I'm gonna start sending them to you too, just to get your reaction to some of these concoctions these people be making. Because the statement you just made, as you said it, my mind was like, "Because everybody's so creative." It is, yeah. I sent them to Sharice. I sent them to my wife. Sent them to a couple other people. You are now on the list of every time I see one. I'm gonna say once I send the first one to you, you will understand why that statement now lives rent free in my head, and I don't just apply it to food now. And whenever somebody does something stupid, my mind says that's because everybody's so creative. Yep. But okay, you say everything. What is your go-to dish? Because I got to get at least one out of you.
I mean, I make greens every week, every Monday.
That's a side. That's not a full dish.
It's definitely a full dish. It-
You
For
were
me,
sitting just eating one plate of greens and nothing else.
yeah, absolutely.
We're gonna go ahead and move on. Cause I can't the greens is aside. That is
I eat them as a side or a main dish. Like most people eat spaghetti as a main dish, but it's really a side.
spaghetti is not a side. Spaghetti can be a side, but it is not a side.
I
Spaghetti
bet
has
you,
always been a main dish.
I bet your wife has a different opinion.
I bet you she don't because we had this conversation. Spaghetti is both it can be
Ain't
a side, but it's also a main dish.
West and don't believe spaghetti is a side.
Spaghetti is not a side. Spaghetti can be a side. Spaghetti is a main. Now, spaghetti's not a strong enough main that if you get another main with it, then it's not going to become a side. Like if you get fish, which I don't like, or you get some chicken, it's going to be a side. However, spaghetti's a main. I have never, in the history of my life, seen anybody other than my daddy, and that's because my daddy was just huge. I love him, but he was just huge. Sit and just eat a plate of greens. It's always greens with something.
I love green.
Ain't nothing wrong with loving greens, but greens is a side.
Debatable.
So Nicodemus, who actually is a chef, and for real chef, yeah, he says spaghetti is actually a main dish. Ask the Italians; they'll tell you that as well.
Well, we ain't in Italy.
But it's their dish. We get it from them. You don't get to tell the folks who made it that's not a main. It's a main
I'm
dish.
pretty sure greens didn't originate over here in America, but we still call it whatever we want to.
But nobody in any country eating greens is a main.
Chitlins is a main dish and a side.
Chitlins is a breakfast food. So that
Chitlins?
doesn't count. Yes, that doesn't count in this conversation. Chitlins, grits, and all that's breakfast type foods.
When did chitlins become a breakfast food?
Listen, maybe I'm just strange. I don't eat chitlins, but I know people who've eaten chitlins for breakfast on a regular basis. Not like as a leftover. Like it got cooked for breakfast.
I
As
know.
stinky as it is.
I love chitlins. I don't actually eat chitlins. I ain't never heard of that. That's crazy.
He said,
I mean,
then ask an African then.
I'll definitely eat them for breakfast. Leftovers.
Nah, that's left. They cooking chitlins for. Yeah, chitlins is disgusting. But no, spaghetti's the main. I'm gonna leave that alone because this is your interview. You want to say that collard greens or greens in general is a main. I'll have to accept that for right now. But I will ask you, what is your favorite kind of green? Collard, turnip, mustard. Which one?
Mustard.
So I got to go one step further, because I don't really eat greens anymore. I used to cook the crap out of some collards, but I couldn't tell you taste wise the difference between a collard, a mustard, or a turnip. So what is the difference?
They're not as strong as collards are in terms of the taste. Um, they have a milder taste, maybe a slight sweetness to them, depending on how you cook them, but they're not as strong as collards. And they're a little more tender. Like they get much tender, more tender than collards.
All right. So let's get back into your wheelhouse. Well, all this is your wheelhouse, but your wheelhouse. You mentioned this at the beginning of the interview, and I stopped you because I told you we was going to come to it a little later in the interview. What is your opinion or your viewpoint? Let me not say opinion. What is your viewpoint of the state of the modern church as it is today?
No.
Care to elaborate?
I mean, it's just it ain't right, honestly. Um, there's so much. There's so much going on that doesn't look like God, doesn't feel like God. Um, it's heavily personality driven. The gospel is not really being preached. Um, people are not really being saved. As a consequence, life's not really being changed. everybody's looking for this blueprint to grow churches and stuff like this, and it's not really growth. You're seeing other church people come from other churches or migrate between services. That's not growth. We've lost our witness. And as a consequence, I think that's why we see what we see in our communities, in our world as in general. No real reverence or respect or fear in the house of God, and as a consequence, see that outside of the church. And that has made the church an easy target for a lot of attacks from both the world and from other churches, religions, and stuff like that. I just feel like that church, we need to get back to the foundational basics of our faith and understand that Jesus alone is enough. And if we build off the hope of Him, then we can again see the change that He desired for us to make in the world that we live in.
So let's talk altar call for a second, because when asked about one of the things that you are most passionate about concerning ministry, altar call was one of the things that came up repeatedly. Aside from outreach, altar call was the next. Now, I feel like you have talked extensively about outreach, which I knew you would, which is why I wanted to deal with altar call. For you, why is it so important? And part two, might as well just get them back to back because you're going to wind up answering it anyway. What is different about how it was done in your era, our era coming up, as opposed to how it's done now?
It's so important to me because for a lot of people, and this is even outside of the altar call, when you meet new people, you get one shot with people. That first impression is 9 times out of 10 the lasting impression, unless you get a second chance. And that's not as often as you would like for it to be with people. And I think the altar call is so important because that is your moment, that is your shot at people. You have that moment aside from, the rest of service, the word, the worship, all that kind of stuff. But the altar call is the moment, the definitive moment that God has given for you to really speak directly into the heart of people. And I take that very serious. Sometimes my end message is the altar call, and so I shape the rest of my message around that so that I can make sure it gets to that point where I'm talking directly to people. And I think what makes it different now than when we were growing up is because the altar call was Jesus focused. Now it's, do you want to make this your church home? Do you want to join this church? Do you want me to be your pastor? And prominent bishop and world-renowned worship singer at one point, was gloating about his altar call. You can't out-soul with him, but watch the altar call. Jesus wasn't even a mention in the altar call. Not once. It was an appeal to join the church and for people to be his pastor. It had nothing to do with Christ. And I think it had nothing to do with Christ because the message had nothing to do with Christ. And that saddens me to know that people come and are entrusting their care into our hands in that moment, and we grossly mismanage it. It's almost spiritual malpractice for real. Because we are not taking advantage of a moment that really could set people free and change their lives. One of the things I respected growing up is, and you hear me talk about Pastor Troy a lot, references to ministry, because he was the gold standard, is the gold standard to me. Him and Pastor JC. But sometimes the altar call would be longer than the message. Like he would literally take his time. He'd hold up service. If he felt like somebody out there needed to hear what he needed to hear, and they were hesitant in their movement or were, scared or whatever the case may be, he would work that altar call until they came. He would hold up 1,500 plus people in that sanctuary just for one person. And that's become a model for me. If God tells me you're out there, I'm coming to get you. And you'll hear me say it sometimes when I do the altar call. If you got somewhere to go, if you got somewhere to be, just put a sign on the door, tell them we gone fishing. We're not going until that one person, even if it's just one person, gets their breakthrough. And so, I don't know, I think altar call is probably the biggest. I don't know. Altar call is actually, I think, more important to me than outreach, and outreach is very important.
How does one work an effective altar call?
Well, I mean, you have to be an effective communicator, and it goes back to earlier when we were talking about communication. Communication is big to me because of that. Your message has to be clear. Like you can't get up there and start working an altar call talking about a whole bunch of stuff that you didn't talk about. For one. Two, it can't just be out of the blue, out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? And it can't be informal. It has to be personal. You can't just get up there and say, "Oh, the door to the church is open." Progress. I've seen it done in a lot of churches. People say, "Door to the church is open. Progress is ready." Officers come forward. They sit a chair right there in front of the church and say nothing. They just sing a song, and the pastor just got his hand lifted, making the, And how's people supposed to respond? And they don't know what's going on. And so, if you're gonna have an effective altar call, your message has to be effective. Like you have to have really believed what you preached in the lead up to that. So much so that they can see the conviction on your life. And when they can see that conviction on your life, then your words match that conviction. And you got their attention. They're bought in. Now you can say anything to them and they'll respond. It's like you sell Jesus in a sense. You let them know that you can't afford to leave this moment without him. It's a life or death situation. It's critical. It is essential. It is imperative that you respond to. In fact, this moment is so important that God designed it just for you. Like nobody else was on his mind but you. And when you get people to really realize that and let them see that this is very personal to them, that's what makes it effective. These general ones, like anybody will come. No, you got to get there and you talk to people. Pastor Trey used to come down off the podium, off the platform, and he would walk the aisles. He would walk pew to pew. He would walk the.
You're breaking up, sir. You didn't start to freeze again.
All right, what about now? Am I back?
No, yeah, you're back now.
And so he would get in people's face, man, and he would talk to. It was almost like, man, he was so good with it. I wanted to join church every Sunday. I felt like it was that personal. Like he talking to me every Sunday. I want to get up there. I want to go. And then he would get up there and he would convince you. And then what would really get it is he would be like, after he did all that, he would make you feel like you was about to miss your moment. He would say, "Last call." People wanted that's so infamous. Like he would say, "Last call," and he would say, "Listen, it's your day, it's your hour. You ought to come. Last call." And then he would say, one more for Jesus. And I'll be like, man, like if you don't want to go, I'll go. But then he started doing stuff like, look, tell your neighbors, say, listen, if you're scared to go, I'll go with you. I'm like, you want to go, man? We can go together. And so, like, that's what makes it effective when you really talk directly to people and help them to understand. Like, listen, you cannot afford to leave this moment without what he is offering, without what I'm offering. Like, you need this. You need this more than the air that you're breathing right now. And when you convince people that, man, that's what makes it effective. I don't feel like I did a good job if at least one person don't come.
Mm-hmm. I definitely get that. Let's see here. What is the most important advice you'd give to young ministers, and what is the most important advice you'd give to seasoned pastors?
Young ministers are just like, or young pastors. Let's clear that.
Young ministers, so that's going to encompass young pastors, anybody who is young in age or young in ministry, and then seasoned pastors, specifically to pastors.
I would say for young ministers, don't run ahead of the anointing. You operate where God has you in that moment, and master that level. Don't try to go no higher until God takes you there. Because I feel like that if you're anxious for it, you ain't really called to it. That's been my working philosophy. I get people all the time that they're so ambitious to preach and to do ministry. All this, doing ministry and being ambitious about doing ministry is one thing. But if you're only ambitious about one aspect of that, as preaching and the accolades and being seen as something, then you got the wrong intentions and motives behind it. But I think that my biggest advice to them is don't run ahead of the anointing or the level that God has you in. And maximize that moment, that level. And if God decides you to take you to another level after you mastered that level, then so be it. If not, if he tells you to stay and you work it until he elevates you, otherwise you don't go ahead of the anointing. You see a lot of pastors do that, or a lot of young leaders do that, and they begin to operate in realms that God never purposed for them to be in that moment, in that time. Like you just started preaching, and now you're trying to pastor. Or you think that you can continue to be heavily itinerant and effectively pastor people. Doesn't really work that way. My advice to young pastors would be, or pastors that get started, especially in your infant stages of ministry, your pastor that first 3 to 5 years, is stop being so liberal with your pulpit.
Yes.
And I would say that to seasoned pastors too. You can't let everybody touch your people. Some people are just not qualified. Some people are just not equipped. Some people just don't have nothing in them other than an aspiration to be something that they were never called to be. And I really hate to see it. Like, I've seen young pastors have other pastors and preachers spend more time in their pulpits than they do.
Mm-hmm. I know a few.
Like, why are you always on break? Why are you always gone? Why are you always like, no, the beginning stage of your ministry is when you need to be still the most. Because if they don't know your voice and have your heart, then how do you expect people to carry the vision?
Facts.
To even know what the essence of your ministry is and what the direction of the church should be. And so we got a lot of pastors and preachers that are just too liberal. You know, I get it, wanting to train other ministers and stuff like that. You know, you set certain services for that. You know what I'm saying? Maybe a Friday night service or a service or something like that. But when it comes to that Sunday morning crowd, not only do your people need to hear you, But you only get one shot with that visitor. And if you are there, if you are not there and somebody messes it up on your behalf, they didn't mess it up, you messed it up.
You messed it up. Yep. That's a fact.
And so, these younger pastors need to learn to be still, like you ain't done nothing to warrant a sabbatical and a break. There are some people who are literally living this and have lived it for years. You ain't done nothing yet. You ain't. It's no way you burnt out. And if you burned out just because you're busy, then you need to reevaluate that. So that would be my advice for seasoned pastors. I would say, get your sight on who's next and begin to train and cultivate them. And let them adopt your heart so that mantle will fall and they get up. That's it. Yeah, I think that's it.
What is something you have struggled with you think is beneficial for this new generation of ministers to learn about, that they don't fall into the same pitfalls that you once did? And it doesn't have to be a sin struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Just something that you struggled with that you think is beneficial for them to learn from.
Let people go. Let people go. My uncle Reese, who's actually my cousin, but I'm, in our generation, older cousins,
Uncles, yep.
He said something to me early on in my ministry. I'll never forget it. He said, "Those who belong won't leave. Those who don't can't stay." And we always get people on the internet, especially these young preachers, tripping about how people are leaving and not supporting all this other kind of. Let's talk about this support thing real quick. If God called you to save people and pastor new people, why are you crying about the support of your family and peers?
Facts.
They don't have to support you. That's not who God told you to reach. They are, especially if they already saved. Now I can see if you want to see the salvation of your family, that's one thing. But being mad that church folk ain't supporting you when God sent you out into the field, that's just not a winning recipe. People ain't got to support you, and they might not. Just because they encourage you to step out don't mean that they're going to step out with you. Mm-hmm. They just saw something and knew that it was something that you needed to heavily consider. Doesn't mean that because you uprooted that they're supposed to be uprooted. Everybody's not going to follow you into the trenches, and that's okay. But let people go. The people who do leave, let them go. You can't hold on to people. You can't be mad at people because they decide that something is now. I get it. We live in a climate where there's a lot of church hopping and people, your season is up and all this other kind of stuff. And my caution to people like that is make sure you perform what you were supposed to perform in that last season while you talking about your season up. Because if you ain't do nothing that last season, it wasn't a season that you were operating in clearly. And nothing is as good as come out of that in this next season. So let's stop using it as a crutch and an excuse, and you weren't even an effective leader and witness in that last season. Let's nip that in the bud as a church. But as a leader, let people go. You can't hold on to everybody all the time. It's never designed to be that. Some people are just sent in to help you get your ministry to a certain place, and then you let them go. You release them as God sees fit. And you bless them on their way out, and you go on about your ministry.
All right, we're about to close off with some rapid fire. These are some questions designed to simply be just that, rapid fire. What makes JC a great friend? Everybody I talked to, that was a sentiment about you, was that JC is a great friend. So what makes you such a great friend?
How much is your much? I wasn't fortunate enough to have a biological father in my life, but you know, we had a neighbor who pops, and he became like a father to me, like seriously. To this day, his kids are my siblings, and I actually honestly look to them more like siblings than I did my own siblings because that was just he had that much influence in my life, and they're such an integral part of my life. There's nothing I wouldn't do for them. Um, but he used to have these sayings, and one of the sayings was, "My much is your much." I used to look at how he interacted with his friends and the people in his life, and he really meant that. Like, if I got it, you got it, and that's how I feel. About friendship. I might not talk to you every day. I might not text you back every time you text me, but when the rubber meets the road, you can always count on me to be there. Like I got you. If you ain't got it, and I got it, you got it. You know what I'm saying? Like I just genuinely care about the well-being of the people that are close to me. Um, I want them to win as much as I want to win, if not more. Friendship is ministry to me. Um, and those who are fortunate enough to be close to me know that. Like, you know what I'm saying? I won't fail you. Right? I, so many other things in life might fail you, but I'm not going to fail you. You know, you always got a friend in me. And I'm just like that. Like, even if I haven't talked to you in years, like if I see you, it's like we never lost connection, never lost communication. You good. That's just, and I have really great friends. Like the friends that I do have, they reciprocate that same energy. Um, and it just makes me want to be even more present for them. So I don't really know the answer to really what makes me a great friend. It's just that I don't know. It goes back to I just love people. Like,
All right. And you talked about this at the beginning, but I want to reiterate it as we're coming close to the close. What is going to be the purpose of this podcast?
Um, you know, we always we always hear things like shift the culture or you know or allowing the culture to influence the things that we do, especially within the kingdom. But the Bible says, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." And the purpose of this podcast is to do just that. We're going to talk about real life experiences, real things that's happening in life, and we're going to discover what God's will is for that moment, or for that situation, or for that circumstance, or whatever the case may be. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. How do we bring heaven into your circle, your orbit of your life's affairs? Um, because God wants us to live victorious lives. It was never God's plan for us to overtly struggle or live in lack or live in confusion or anything like that. The answers are there. And so we're going to kingdom the culture. We're not going to allow the culture to influence the kingdom. We're going to kingdom the culture. We're going to bring Jesus into the center of our affairs and watch people win.
Now, selfishly, I got to ask, because you are still a member, as far as I'm concerned, of the Real Talk podcast as well. Um, I believe in a lot of ways our mentalities as to how we approach conversation are very similar. So, how will this podcast be different from the Real Talk podcast?
Um,
Aside from you won't have a liar on there. Sorry, I had to.
I think that it'll be different in the sense that it'll be essentially solely focused on the culture. It's not going to have a lot of church talk or anything like that. I'm not saying that yours does or anything like that, but and it may come up in certain topics of discussion or whatever the case may be. But I'm not interested in what's trending in the church. I'm more so just interested in what's trending in people's lives and in their culture. And I really want um, God to be able to speak through me to them directly. You asked me earlier, why haven't I embraced the apostolic mantle, fully embraced the things that God has called me? And I think that God didn't call me to be an apostle to church. If He called me to be apostle to anything, it's going to be the street. And I want to be their pastor. For those who don't have a pastor or don't have a church home or do have one, but they can't connect on the level of which I'm connecting with people. I want to be their voice. I want to be their go in between. I want to be their Moses. I don't mind standing in between God and people and, taking the hits if necessary in order for you to get the answers that you need for your life. And so this podcast is extremely personal because I feel like I owe it to people just as much as I owe it to God.
And here's my closing question. I felt like this was going to be a fitting closing question. It's not a rapid fire one, but I believe it speaks to not only the heart of you, or will speak to the heart of you, but will really give people an insight as to not only what can they look forward to from this podcast going forward, but what they can look forward to from JC as a person, as a man of God, as all of those things going forward. What in your mind is going to be the legacy of JC? Not just when we think about legacy, we normally think about after we're gone, right? I mean, in this season. For this season of your life, what is going to be the legacy of JC Wallace?
I would hope that my legacy would be allowing people to see the kingdom in a new light, in a more personal and intentional way. That through me, they found God personal. In that connection allowed them to live holistically, on purpose. It all points back to Him. I just want to be the vessel that God uses to connect Him with His people. And I want that to be my legacy. That I hook people up with the man himself.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you, sir, for allowing me to be the one to help bring the expose of JC Wallace on this first On Earth podcast. You know I'm rooting for you. I wish you nothing but the best, nothing but success in everything that you do. And as always, bro, if you need anything, I ain't nothing but a text, phone call, or whatever way, I got you. It's back in your hands, sir.
All right, man. I appreciate you, Jesse, man. Thank you for answering the call and stepping up to the plate, man. Like I said, there's only a couple of people that I knew that could pull this off, but you were definitely the most unbiased voice that I could trust to do this. And of course, nobody could do this the way that you did. Thank you for challenging me. I kind of dug into some things that I didn't necessarily, would have liked to dig into, but it is what it is. I gave you that free reign, and my prayer is that people were able to take away something from this, and if nothing else, just have a better understanding of who I am and what makes me tick. So that moving forward, they understand that I'm coming with heat. I'm coming to change lives. I'm coming to set the captives free. I'm coming to connect you with Jesus. I'm coming to bring heaven on earth for your sake. And so get ready for this ride. This is going to be a thriller. But thank you for helping me to introduce it. Thank you for the Real Talk podcast, for allowing you to come on in, all your staff, and
You've been serious for too long. You had to get one in. I know it.
Hey, listen, everybody. Y'all stay tuned, please. If you haven't followed the Real Talk podcast right here on Facebook, they also have the YouTube channel. Jesse, sometimes I'm on there. Judas is on there. Unrepentant Judas is on there, aka J. Jordan's Liner. And so we definitely have a good time on there. And then he also has special guest interviews that he's doing also. So make sure y'all tune into the Real Talk podcast. Check Jesse out. Check out High Praise Ministries. If you're in the Atlanta area, make sure you're looking for somewhere to go to church on Saturdays. He's having service every Saturday at 1:00. And so make sure y'all tune in and follow High Praise Ministries and Real Talk Podcast on Facebook. What else? Be on the lookout. Follow us. Make sure you're following the On Earth Media Group page, because that's where we will be landing all of our podcast episodes, and the YouTube channel will be up tomorrow. And then also on Instagram, On Earth Media. And then follow me, of course, JC Wallace. I am JC Wallace everywhere. So listen, I love y'all. Thank you for spending this last almost 3 hours with us. We apologize for the technical difficulties. I'm going to edit this show to eliminate like the half hour or so that we were dealing with technical difficulties.
Thank you. I rambled like a mug.
And so we'll get that edited, and then we'll probably rebroadcast it as a live stream later on this week. But listen, I love y'all, man, and I hope y'all understand that and know that. And I'm only doing this because of y'all, because God, wants me to, and because I love y'all. So stay tuned, rock with us, and there's so much more coming up in the near future. So keep your eyes peeled, because JC is unleashed, and it's getting ready to be a spectacle for the kingdom's sake. So, all right, love y'all. God bless you. God smile upon you. May the Lord watch between me and thee while we're absent one from another, as we ask. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen again. And
This
amen.
is Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk. This is Real Talk Radio. This is Real Talk. High Praise Ministries presents Real Talk.